Welcome back to our books episode 3, where we'd like to talk about a short story or two that Paolo chose this time. How are you feeling today?
Feeling all right. Yeah, it's interesting to talk about these two stories. Especially, I'm curious to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, I want to say also thanks, because I definitely feel very reinvigorated as far as reading goes. I haven't been reading much.
Yeah.
And I'm really having fun with this, so definitely gonna record more. And some foreshadowing, you've almost finished the 3-body problem. Depression books.
Yes, the depression books. I'm on depression book 3.
And you're not depressed?
My depression level is Australia.
Oh no! That's the worst part. No, it's not the worst part. It's one of the bad parts.
I have a lot of things.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to do the 3-body problem. So after this episode, we're planning to do that, and it might be like a lot of episodes. We're gonna keep it 1 hour per episode. We'll see. Hopefully, it's gonna be 1 hour per book. But I'm already feeling like it's not gonna happen.
1 hour per problem. 1 hour per body.
Yes, exactly. But anyways, on this episode, we'd like to get into Lovecraft, which I read and forgot. Now I read it. I know something. I feel like I've actually read it, because in the past I used to read a lot of kind of stuff, and I think I gave up, like especially because of the language and the style. And I think I used to read it to study English, because that's what I used to do a lot before I spoke English well. And it really put me off because the language was difficult.
Yeah, to be honest, I always read Lovecraft in Italian. And I didn't know, which is something I found out when I recommended these short stories to you, which is that Lovecraft's, all of his short stories are publicly available online for free.
I knew that, yeah.
Yes, I knew that Lovecraft stuff is not copyright protected, which is why you see so much Cthulhu stuff for literally everything. There are so many games. But this was my first time, because I was reading the stories again after recommending them to you. It was my first time reading them in English, and I have to admit that, yeah, it was quite challenging. Like, to be honest, I feel like in Italian it was also not easy. Like they were using like a particularly elaborate language. And
by the way, do you feel like Italian is a very descriptive? In Czech language we say flowery language?
I think so. I think it's descriptive in a different way from English.
I'm asking because Czech people are very proud of the way that poetry and like Czech literature is very descriptive in a very poetic way, and they say it's like you have this word that means like flowery, and it means just like it keeps expanding and describing in all kinds of ways. It's very pretentious, doesn't mean anything. But
most people in Italy think that Italian is a very good language for poetry and for songs, and that is mainly because, like Japanese, Italian ends like 99% of its words with vowels, usually it follows the one consonant, one vowel rule, so it's extremely easy to make rhymes. Yeah, it's very musical, so people are very proud of that. English is a better language to dry descriptions of things. Like there are a lot of idioms and expressions which give a very dry but powerful explanation of what you want to describe. Italian is more verbose.
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying this because I don't want to be horribly offensive, but I feel like English that Lovecraft uses is the language that it was before it degraded. Like I feel like English is one of the simplest languages, but it's not because the language is simple, it's because people are so lazy, and it's like the most globalized language, and it's just this mix of cultures where the nuances and like depth slowly fades away because there is no need for it, and the utility and the purpose of the language is to just have basic communication, which English is just that. But before that happened, I think that's how the language was. So I don't feel like this style is pretentious nor bad. I think it's actually kind of very imaginatively nice. Like the descriptions, especially the feelings and the nightmarish like qualities, which is why I think this is popular, because it makes you appreciate the descriptive language.
Right. I mean, from what I heard, is considered particularly elaborate and like using a lot of again complicated sounding words more than usual. But yeah, like I understand what you mean, and I think it's fair.
It has its purpose, so I appreciate it. I don't mind it.
yeah. No, I agree. Like compared to like the articles I read on a daily basis, like it is very different English, or even like most modern books that I read now.
Mm-hmm. So just a very, very quick summary of the like factual information about Lovecraft. He was born in 1890 and died very early when he was 46 years old in 1937 because of cancer. And he had a very strange life that I read about, that he was quite in a wealthy family, and then after his parents died, he had to live in very poor conditions, and his mental state or just the quality of life deteriorated, and then that might be why in all his photos he looks so abysmally depressed. Do you feel like he looks like that?
I read a lot of things about his life and kind of like mental condition, because many people think like he was suffering from different mental problems. Some people say he was asexual. Some people say he was like latently homosexual, because of course he grew up in a very conservative environment.
I see.
Some people say that possibly homosexual because he never got married. I think he never had any relationship, according to the biographies.
He definitely looks like he hasn't had an easy life in his portraits and photos. Yeah. So before we move on to the short stories, one thing I wanted to mention is cosmicism, the philosophy, which is definitely in all of his stories and books and novels and novelettes and things like that. Which I didn't know novelette is a word.
I didn't know that either.
But anyway, so the philosophy of cosmicism is that there is no recognizable divine presence, no God, and humans are insignificant to the larger scheme of like the existence in the universe and the galaxy and everything, which is very realistic, but he takes it a step further and just focuses on the dread of this realization, and then
which, by the way, is a very important theme in the second book of the Three Body Problems.
Oh my God,
not in Dune, but
I was just about to say we haven't referenced Dune.
But it is very, very relevant in the second book of the Three Body Problem. But the reason why I'm saying this, aside for the jokes, is because I think this is a very important theme related to the second the second story that we are going to talk about, and the scientific environment in which it was like Lovecraft was writing, because as we mentioned, like he was writing in the earlier 20th century, so this was around the time when Einstein relativity theory came out, and there were a lot of big discoveries related to space, and the two fundamental theories which completely changed physics and the way we see reality, which are the relativity theory and the quantum theory by Heisenberg, which again, they are both referenced in the second story.
Yeah, so that's just quickly what I want to mention. So we picked, or Paolo picked two stories. One is extremely short, so I'm going to go over that quickly, and then you're going to dive into the longer one. So what's the first one? Why did you choose it?
Okay, so the first one is called The Nameless City. It's a story which was written in 1921. Okay. A story that Lovecraft wrote pretty early in his career, and it's considered the first one in the cosmology of Lovecraft. It's the first time the Necronomicon is referenced, the first time Abdullah al-Azred is referenced. And the reason why I chose it, and the reason why I think this is the best story to read if you want to approach Lovecraft for the first time, or as it is more probable if you heard about it in other instances, like again, such as board games or things like that, and you're curious about what it actually is about, I would definitely recommend this one. One reason is, of course, what you just said. It is really short. So if you don't like it, like you would have probably wasted like, I don't know, less than an hour of your time. Like, okay, so the story has an extremely short like plot, and it's just one character, no lines of dialogue, just this person going through this mysterious place and gradually descending both figuratively and literally into things that are impossible to understand. And the reason why I think this is so descriptive and so representative of what Lovecraft is about is because what is relevant is the depiction of the atmosphere and the mood and the mental state of the characters. That is what it's all about. Yeah,
it's the only thing that's there.
Yes, yes.
Like, nothing actually happens like in the story.
Yes, it shows in this very short story, which why I think like this is a really amazing in a way. Like he was able to do this in such a short story, is that it really gives you this terrifying vibe of like there is this unknown, which is not scary because it's a big monster which is coming to kill you, but just because it makes you so insignificant and so irrelevant in the face of like universe and the eons of times.
It's interesting you read so much into it. I didn't get much out of it, to be honest. The first one.
I mean, like, to be honest, like, I wouldn't have got this much out of it if I had read only this one. Like, this is more of
I see.
general like, reflection of... It's a nice peek into what Lovecraft can give you as a reader.
True.
Yeah.
If you want to just see what it's like, this is a good thing to try. And you definitely know if you want to read more after this or not. Because a very good sample of his style. So, because this is a very, very simple story, let's just go over the plot and also spoil it, because... If you want to read it, I guess stop now and read it, but...
There's not much to spoil.
There is nothing to spoil, so just don't worry about this one. Yes. I don't want to, like, paint this in a bad light, but...
No, don't worry.
So a guy is looking for a lost city. Why? Not sure. I guess that's not the point. He discovers an ancient place that feels, kinds of ways. Is spooky, scary, creepy, eerie. And he finds all these carvings and details, and he keeps going in, and he keeps hearing things and seeing things and thinking about things. And then there's an ominous door or portal or entrance or tunnel, I'm not sure. And he feels this strange pull that's gonna suck him in. And there are all these descriptions of like creatures and feelings and universes, and I think lizard creatures, if I don't misremember.
Yes, essentially what he finds is Nameless City. It has a portal. At the beginning, he thinks it's like the tomb of this ancient civilization, but it seems like it has this portal, which may either lead like to the ghosts of this civilization or actually to this civilization.
Yeah, and then does he get out or does he die? I wasn't sure.
I also am not sure. I think he gets out, but
yeah, it's very, very ambiguous. All the things Paul just said, I wouldn't be sure happened. I think it's deliberately described so it could only be in his head and he could only imagine because he's like creeped out by the place. That's what I got.
Right, but that's the point to me. We don't get basically any information on the main character. It's supposed to be kind of like this adventurous like dude who's like, let me go and explore stuff, which again was pretty popular like at the end of the 19th century and then the beginning of the 20th century. Like people would go to the Middle East in search for artifacts and like lost cities. So that is kind of like the idea. But then the twist is that instead of being like this amazing discovery or even this like sad discovery in the sense as in like, oh yeah, we found this civilization and they collapsed. It's more as in like, oh yeah, this is not cool at all. It's actually a really dreadful experience because all of this time ago is actually terrifying, and it shows how short the age of man is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say about this. It was very moody. It's definitely prime time, stereotypical tea and biscuit, relax and read a story and think about things. Like, it's not gonna make you excited. It's not gonna make you like scared. It's not gonna make you really feel anything, I don't think. It's just gonna make you ponder about stuff a little bit and put you in kind of a mood.
No, I agree.
We usually do this at the end, but one quote is very famous, and I've heard this before, but I don't know where it was from.
Yeah, it is one of the most famous quotes by Lovecraft.
Maybe we can both read it, and then I'll decide who read it better. So the quote was, "This is not that which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die." Okay, you read it better now.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, let me try. "This is not that which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die."
Okay, I think it was better. So I would recommend this story if you want to just know what Lovecraft is like and spend the least amount of time possible. That's my recommendation. You can read this like literally in half an hour.
Yeah, it's really short. I guess depending on your English skills, because as Philip noted down, there are some interesting words.
I wrote down a list of words because I do that while I read to like keep up with my English, so I can like learn some new words. I feel like it's important. I wrote a lot of these, and the story was really short. Maybe an example that's not written here, but I found it fun to be reminded that queer or queeriness doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means, but it can also mean weirdness or strangeness or unusual things. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like gay, if you read gay in 19th century literature.
Exactly. So. Okay, so let's get into the second one, which I liked a lot, and it's much more, there's more meat to it, more horror, more plot, and I think this is definitely what I would recommend to read as a story from Lovecraft. It's called The Dreams in a Witch House, and it takes place in Arkham, which I asked Paolo, is it the same that Batman lives in?
Well, Batman lives in Gotham.
Oh, sorry.
Which is the...
Not he lives there, but...
Right. So yeah, there is the Arkham Asylum in...
Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah, in Gotham, which is inspired by Lovecraft.
I didn't know. That's cool.
You can find a lot of things called Arkham in different media, and also you can find a lot of Miskatonic University or Miskatonic something, which is also part of this story.
Okay. This story is called Dreams in a Witch House, which implies it's going to be about dreams, and I love stories about dreams. So it was definitely good for me, and I really appreciated the strange shifting from real and dream states, which I wasn't aware when and how they changed, which was very original to me. Like, they didn't state when it switched to a dream or when he came out of the dream specifically, and it really worked in the sense that you were feeling like the character.
Yes. And again, in this one also, there's barely any dialogue.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even think about the dialogue. There isn't any.
So it is purely descriptive of what is happening to the character. You are seeing things through the lens of the main character for most of the story, so you're not really sure what is happening. Like, I think like the problem with writing these kind of stories, and the reason why many people fail, is when they try to write about dreams, they end up writing in this very dreamy way and very confusing way, and it's just off-putting because you're reading it and you're like, yeah, I can understand. Yeah, I have dreams like that, but I don't understand them, and I don't understand what I'm reading now. So it's not really giving me much. But in this case, like it is really creepy because it's like those dreams, like those lucid dreams, where like it really feels like you're awake, but actually you're dreaming, and you can't really tell what is happening. I think that's like the strongest point of the story.
Yeah, it was really, really cool horror story. I like horror, so it was fun for me. Another thing they play around with is math, which I like too. So it's another one of those like science mixing with magic and mysticism, Euclidean space and travel to another dimension and open door to a different world, and like 2D, 3D, 4D dimensional like spatial. Which this is gonna be a discussion in the three-body problem that we're never gonna end talking about.
Yes,
I'm already dreading this discussion. I feel like so let's not get into it right now much. But
but this is what I mentioned before. So I was doing some research before the podcast, and I was reading that actually Lovecraft, before writing this story, he was heavily inspired by a lecture he attended at a university by a mathematician who was discussing, non-Euclidean geometry and hyperdimensional space, the possible existence of different universes. Because again, like at this point in time, this was the big scientific revolution, like the big thing that changed the way we perceive space and time. He mentions this mathematician whose name is Willem de Sitters.
Never heard of him, to be honest.
Yeah, Willem de Sitter. Yeah, I don't think he's a famous person, but he's mentioned in the story together with Einstein. Quantum space is mentioned. That is one of those things where, because quantum, I feel like when usually you mention it, it feels like something very futuristic and something that it's really new, and you think about sci-fi or super modern technology. But the idea of quantum theory actually started in the 20s. So it is interesting to read.
Yeah, definitely a cool motive.
Yeah, in a story written 100 years ago. I really appreciated the fact that he tried to mix in this mathematical background into the story, and not just being magic. There is a portal to another. There is a magical portal to another universe, and it's like Narnia or whatever.
So before we get into the story itself, I want to quickly mention that this has been adapted, so other people liked it too. First of all, there was a movie called Curse of the Crimson Altar with Christopher Lee and Boris Karloff, which are one of my favorite all-time horror movie actors. They're both awesome. Do you know Christopher Lee?
Of course. He was Saruman
in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
he's got a heavy metal band. He sings in armor and
he is awesome. Count Dooku in.
Yeah, he's one of the best actors ever.
Star Wars.
And Boris Karloff also is great in old horror movies. So this movie I'm kind of interested in. It's just loosely based on this. And then there is a series called Masters of Horror from 2005 where they adapted this in one episode. And we're gonna talk about Jenkins later, but so I'll send you a picture later. It's hilarious. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
Maybe I can just send you now since we are talking about it. But this is amazing adaptation. There is a monster in the story and they adapted it. So I'm gonna send Paolo the picture. And
what is this?
guess the character.
What?
Who do you think this is?
I mean, no, I understand. This is Brown Jenkins, but
this is amazing.
It looks terrible.
This is so bad. It's good because if I saw this, I would be horrified.
Yeah, but I mean, he looks like a monkey rather than a
rat. He looks like a rat, kind of. But
does he? I don't know.
I mean, they did a horrible and awesome job at the same time to adapt this. So, if you're into a good horror movie from Lovecraft, I recommend it. And hit stop if you want to read it. And if you want to hear the details, just let's get into spoilers.
Yes.
But yeah, so let's get into the spoilers. So I'm going to attempt to briefly sum up the plot. So this story is about Gilman, who's a student of math and folklore, I think. And he moves into a new place. I'm not sure it's explained why he picked this place. I guess it's cheap and he's a student. I mean, I would do that.
I think the underlying idea is that he wanted to stay in this house because he was so interested in this.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes much more sense. I just thought he was a Czech cheap person. So never mind.
I mean, maybe that's also the reason, but I always
I would pick that just based on the price because I imagine a cursed witch house is definitely a cheap place to stay at.
Yeah.
So the room where he's staying at is kind of a strange layout, and all the structure is kind of a surreal like layout, and of course he starts to have bizarre dreams, and all hell breaks loose, figuratively, literally, and dream-like, reality-like, and in all other ways. And there are a bunch of characters that are really cool, and I think that's the main reason why this story is so popular and why there are references to it. I'll attempt to pronounce, and then please correct me. Azathoth.
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 I don't know. I always call it Azathoth, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation.
So that's a mindless entity which rules time and space from a throne at the center of chaos. Haven't heard anything more metal.
Yes.
Amazing. I really love it, even though I don't know what he is. I love it.
Yeah, so in Lovecraft's cosmology, Azathoth is it changes from story to story, but essentially is one of the great elders, or like the elder ones, kind of like Cthulhu. But the difference with the others is that Azathoth first is supposed, like in some of the stories, like, such as in this one, is considered to be kind of like the ruling figure of the whole universe, whereas like others like Cthulhu and so on are just like extremely powerful aliens, essentially.
Okay.
He I don't know, Azathoth, because like all of these ancient ones, these elder ones have this thing where like they're sleeping. His awakening essentially means the end of the universe. Like when he awakes, he will destroy the universe.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not in this story, but in the cosmology of Lovecraft, that's the role of Azathoth.
Cool. It's even more metal.
Yeah, it's even more metal.
Tough guy.
Yeah, exactly. I think he devours the universe or something like that.
Wow. So then, second name? Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep. How do you say that?
I don't know. I always mentioned Nyarlathotep, but mainly because like his name is clearly inspired by Egyptian...
Like Imhotep or something?
Yeah, Imhotep and like Egyptian names.
And cats and like Nyan.
Yeah, maybe, actually Lovecraft was a weeb, and he liked cats.
I love these names. All of his names are amazing. Except the most famous one, Cthulhu. I don't like the name. Like it's kind of like I don't like it. But
I think because you saw
amazing.
it too many times. Like, if you had seen it only once, then...
It doesn't sound cool. Like, Nyarlathotep, it's like, Azathoth. It's like, wow. But Cthulhu, like, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, Nyarlathotep is pretty cool.
So I wrote, he's an alien god, ? And you said, no, he's just a messenger.
Well, so, Nyarlathotep is strange character. He's one of the favorites among... people who like Lovecraft, because he is this strange figure where he's not the entity itself. Like, again, he's not Azathoth, he's not Cthulhu, but he's the one who brings people to them. So he acts kind of like as the messenger of the entity.
I see.
So yeah, in this case, his job in the story is to make people sign the Book of Azathoth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does that do? That's another thing that happens in the story. What does it do for him to sign this book?
It's not explained. You can say that essentially it's kind of like selling your soul to the devil.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, also because like some people associate a Nyarlathotep figure to Satan, or like to a devil. So I guess you can say that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nyarlathotep
is kind of like making you sign, like you're selling your soul or something. Because after the main character signs the book, he starts to do things which I'm not sure he was exactly intending to do.
Yeah, okay, of course. Yeah. And besides these two ungodly gentlemen, there is also a woman who is described as a crone, which I didn't know the word crone.
Oh, really?
It means a thin, like dying, skinny woman.
Yeah. Usually the three crones, which I think it's the origin of the name, is in Greek mythology. There was the story of these three sisters who, like, they are in Hercules, the Disney movie, so probably you've seen them there. They are the ones which decide how long someone's life is. So I don't know. Yeah. So what they do is they sew like a thread.
Oh, I know that. Okay.
Yeah. Like there is the youngest sister is the one which starts to sew the thread. So she's the one which does it when a person is born. Then there is the second sister who's the one who decides how long it would be, and the third one which cuts it, which is when you die. And they share one eye and one tooth. There was something that when I was a child and I was reading Greek mythology, I was like, I can understand why they share one eye, but why do they share one tooth? Like, what's the purpose? But yeah, they share one eye and one tooth. And as you might know, in ancient Greek, Chronos, so the crone is time, so they determine the time of the life, so it's Chronos.
Yeah,
I think that's the origin of the word.
That's a clever play on words, Chronos and crone. Yeah. So this crone has the best pet in any horror story because his name is Brown Jenkin. That's the picture we looked at in the adaptation, and he's described as a huge rat with giant fangs. Or not fangs, giant teeth.
Yeah, like I don't know which word would be more appropriate.
So it's like a oversized rat with a strangely human-like face.
Yes.
Which in the adaptation of the TV show, they just put a man's face on the rat and they gave him like, imagine the vampire teeth, but they put them at the very front of his mouth. He's like grinning and he's got like whiskers. It's amazing.
Yeah. It looks terrible.
Yeah, so all these creatures appear, and he keeps like shifting from dreams to reality, and worse and worse things start happening, and he's sleepwalking, which another word I didn't know was somnambulism.
Somnambulism. The one
it just
I know.
means sleepwalking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because in Italian it's basically the same. Because again, it comes from Latin. Somnus means sleeping.
Okay.
Ambulism means moving.
Oh, okay.
Like ambulatory. It's like...
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's like
Thanks for explaining.
Yeah.
Glad you're here and not just me who I don't know anything. So, yeah, eventually it just all goes really bad and he dies and he's killed by Jenkin. And Jenkin literally eats his heart out.
Yes, it comes out of his chest, which is something my brain had removed until I read the story again today.
Oh, you read it today?
Yeah, I was like... Wow, I completely forgot about this. What the fuck?
Best part.
Yeah, it's much more gory than what I remembered.
Yeah. So then the house is abandoned and nobody knows if it happened, what happened, and if it was a dream, wasn't a dream. But then the police uncovers some hidden parts of the house and they find like suspicious skeletons, according to a large, like rat-looking like skeleton that clearly it's Jenkin. And... yeah, so that's how the story ends.
Yeah, and I like, because again, as I was saying at the beginning, the narrator is very factual. So at different points, he's kind of telling you, like, you know, this may all be just like this guy deluding himself and just becoming more and more crazy. And, you know, just living out his fantasies and his dreams rather than being real. And until the end, then in the end, he's like, oh, you know, yeah, they find these bones. So it's kind of a proof, but it's not really a proof. And you're kind of like, are these people just like, maybe there was just something fake, or maybe it was true. I mean, it's clearly leaning on the it was true side, but like I guess like it's a way to show that for society at large, it was never true.
Okay.
Like it was never like objectively true. But for you as the reader, you have like yeah, this is probably exactly what happened. Like this guy wasn't really crazy. I mean, he got crazy at the end, but he went crazy, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really like good horror stories. I like some gore. I like I like creatures, monsters, like villains, and like, so that I enjoyed it. But I don't really have much more to say about this other than what we said about the first story. The descriptions are really surreal, and I really like how they shift between the dreams and the creatures, the monsters, the bad guys are really well fleshed out, even though you don't learn about them very much, but the way they are presented is very suggestively imaginative. I guess.
Yeah, and again, in this one too, I think the fear of the unknown is like the scariest part of the whole story. Like until the end, you don't really know what happened, where did he go, what did he do, why did they sacrifice a child, like what was exactly going on. You don't know anything.
Yeah, that's definitely the theme, and that's the feeling of dread that should make you scared. But
I also really like as we said before, the mathematical part, like the more scientific spin to it. especially when he goes and sees things like in different dimensions.
Hmm.
He sees the sophons, and that's really cool.
That's great. So that's it for the short story. Before we end this episode, I learned that Paolo found out that there is also a connection with Alan Moore and his comic books.
Yeah, so Alan Moore, to no one's surprise, I guess, really likes Lovecraft. There were already a lot of connections in the League of the Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, if you read those, I think the first 2 books are essentially just Lovecraft stories. Among the last things Alan Moore wrote, because he recently retired, he wrote a graphic novel called Neonomicon, and then he followed that up with 3 volumes called Providence.
Okay.
The 2 stories are connected, so the end of Providence connects back to Neonomicon. It's a little complicated because you should read Neonomicon first and then read Providence, because otherwise you can't understand the ending of Providence. But the ending of Providence is actually set, like the last chapter is after Neonomicon.
Mm-hmm.
So the ending of Neonomicon is in the last volume of Providence. Anyway, besides that, what is it? It's Alan Moore's attempt to connect as many as possible of Lovecraft stories and kind of like give it a unitary, kind of like set them all in the same world. And the interesting part is that not only connects them to he connects like the different stories, but he also connects them to Lovecraft himself, so that in Providence, as some of you may know, Providence is a city in New England, in the United States, and it's where Lovecraft lived. Okay. It was kind of like his hometown. So Lovecraft is actually a character in Providence. So he's in the story, but the monsters and things, and like Brown Jenkins and so on, they are also, or like Nyarlathotep and so on, they are also part of the story. Essentially, Lovecraft is a character in one of his own stories. It's kind of complicated to explain. I don't want to give away too much also, because I think it's really interesting if someone reads it. But I don't need to like explain why Alan Moore is like worth reading, but I think if you're interested in Lovecraft, that's an amazing way to really give it this kind of like conclusion to everything. Providence has highs and lows. I think it's really interesting, but Neonomicon is really interesting, and the ending of Neonomicon, and then the ending of Providence, because as I said, the ending of Neonomicon is at the end of Providence, is one of the biggest mindfucks I've ever had in my life. Like, if you read Neonomicon, like you read the last chapter, and you're like, oh.
So that's a comic book, right?
Yes. Yeah. These are graphic novels. But yeah, Neonomicon is really, really cool. If you have the opportunity, I definitely recommend it. So.
Okay. We could do that. Maybe let us know, listeners, at mindduckjapan@gmail.com what kind of books you want to hear about in the future episodes. Or if you want to hear about comic books. Alan Moore is definitely one of my favorite people, celebrity, wizard, magician, weirdos.
Bearded people.
Hobo, wizard, weirdos. Alan Moore is amazing. Yeah. Like, anything I hear about him is awesome.
Yes, I agree. Every time I learn more about him, I like him more. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about him is how much he hates any adaptation of his work.
That's so funny.
I mean, I like... Because I can imagine him like in his cave, throwing curses at corporations and DC for selling his characters. But at the same time, I'm like, it's okay.
I think that by definition it cannot be okay. Like, his whole being is against all of this.
Yes, no, I agree. But he's a super cool guy.
Yeah. This was quite a short episode, so I guess we can talk a bit more about Alan Moore, because I meant to ask you. Obviously, we've read some comic books. It's pretty easy to get into, especially because it was adapted to movies. Like, I guess the most famous is Watchmen or V for Vendetta. So you know him. But he also writes novels, and I think the novels are like the most difficult thing to read I've ever heard about. Like, recently, I read a lot about the latest book he's written. It's called Jerusalem in 2016. Have you heard about that?
No, I've never read any of his books.
It's insane. It's like if you wanted to make up a book and write it in such a way and such length that nobody would ever be able to understand it, it would be this.
Alright.
Like, what?
Interesting.
I was like reading about it. I was like, what the fuck is he doing? Like,
Well, I mean, if you read like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I feel like the older he gets, the more he likes to make things complicated. Like in the third volume of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is called The Black Chapter or something like that. Like, it's insane. Like, everything about it is insane. Like, first it's like so many things are like super, like the dialogues are super long and everything, but then there are certain parts, like at one point there is a parody of the like 1984, and so there's like inside the comic book, like the actual comic book, there is like this tiny comic book, like comic book strip, like made with a different paper, and like the page size is very tiny, and it's kind of like this propaganda of like 1984, like you know, of the Big Brother and how you should be a good person under that regime. Or like there are some pages which are in 3D, so the book actually comes with 3D glasses. Because some pages are in a terrible 3D, like it looks awful because it was written like at the early 2000s. So like, yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, there are so many things which just are like, oh my god. And then there are certain parts which it just gives up and it's like, okay, now this is not a comic book anymore, and it just becomes a book. It's only written. And it's like, this is so hard to read. It's only 10 pages. So I can't imagine reading a full book. Yeah,
it's so funny because he's got such good ideas and characters and everything, and then he represents them, like shows them in such difficult way to consume.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And this book, Jerusalem, is the culmination of all this. 1266 pages. And it's like stories within stories, books within books, and then all like connected. And so that's already confusing. And then it's not chronological, which is more confusing. And then the same characters like appear or reappear like in different timelines, and they are or are not the same people. And then it's like dream or not dream, and reality or other dimension or parallel universe. I don't know. But then on top of all this, he writes a whole chapter in like street-like English, like British slang, and he twisted all the words to, if you're English, so you read them like with English pronunciation, and it should sound like if you pronounce them in a very bad slang. So it's not legible. Or maybe I can like show you a part. And you can just try to read it. It's so funny. Just for fun, I'd be very curious if you can even read this.
Yeah.
This is like the book. How he writes the book. Like, what the fuck?
Here's excitingly, grabby, rural, lover her claps, win over boy trucks. I can't understand.
So what is the situation like? Like, don't tell me what he says, but what do you think is happening? Like, just
I think someone is offending the other person.
No, they're having sex.
No, they're having sex. Okay.
He says her excitingly grabs her lover cups.
Right. Lover cups. Okay.
Love handles. One of her buttocks. Cups. One of her buttocks, like grabs.
Okay.
But you can't understand it. And it's disgusting.
Yes.
And it doesn't make any sense. And it's in this book that's 1,300 pages. What the fuck? So anyway, thank you for this explanation. It's pretty cool about the comic book. I'm kind of interested to have a look at that.
Yeah, if you have the chance, please read it. I definitely recommend reading Neonomicon. It's pretty short, and like just for the ending, please read it.
Okay.
But again, because it's like recent Alan Moore, get ready for a lot of like naked people and rape and other disgusting things. Okay.
Yeah, that's Alan Moore. He doesn't give any fucks about anything. So thanks a lot for listening. So next episode is gonna be the first part of the trilogy by
Cixin Liu.
Sounds very cute when you say it like that.
I'm not sure my Chinese pronunciation is any good, but...
So it's the Free Body Problem. It's pretty good. The connoisseur of despair was mildly disappointed that it wasn't depressing enough.
Yes. I have a lot of things to say about these books.
We'll see how it goes with Liu Cixin and the Free Body Problem. And based on the success or failure of that, we're gonna decide how long the Dune discussion is gonna be.
Yes, and also I wanted to say, like, we went through a full episode without mentioning Dune even once. I mean, I said I only said that we're not mentioning, but we had no reference to Dune, which
okay, that's a failure.
Yeah,
which I was thinking about.
We need to find something that can work. Let me think. Is there any connection?
Well, the only thing I can think of is the the Prussians and traveling into space using spice, and
it's not really the same though.
In Dune, the new movie, there is a rat running on the sand, and it's also a rat like a Jenkins.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening.
Right, thank you.
And see you in the next episode.
See you.
Thank you for listening. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends, and on the next episode we're finally going to dive in to the Remembrance of Earth's Past. I just call it the Free Body Problem Trilogy by Liu Cixin. We've planned out 4 episodes. First one's gonna be about the whole trilogy, no spoilers, and then each next episode for each book, full on spoilers.